Alright, I've been really procrastinating this, and this is going to be super scuffed, but I just have to make this and let it be bad, or else I'm just never going to do it. Alright, this is Falcon Master's overview of the 6-man comp and how I want Zeus to play it. Quick explanation of 6-man is that it's a very high mobility and low spam composition. So usually always played with Monkey Diva. Some teams play ball, but they're weird. Monkey Diva is definitely the way to go in my opinion. Always playing Lucio Moira. And then the DPS can be anything that can engage well. So that would be Tracer, Sombra, Reaper, Doomfist, Echo. All those DPS are really good. A lot of the Overwatch League examples we have of the 6-man composition were during a meta where Tracer and Sombra were banned. So you don't have a lot of footage of them playing those compositions, but the team comp is still really strong. Let's go over some examples of what that looks like. Because 6-man is super mobile, they always go through a dive structure, the classic dive team fight, which is to scout. If we're watching Hanbin's POV here from Dallas Field versus Shanghai Dragons, they're walking to the right side, they're scouting for the enemy team comp. They're figuring out, okay, it's Ball Diva, Lucio, Ana, and then the DPS, the Soldier Ashe, are very diveable, and so is Ana. So they're going to look for a diveable target and rotate. These rotations are very important. If you look at how long these rotations take, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So like that's just a lot of rotation time. And then the dive happens about right now once they see the soldier. 1, 2, 3, 4. So dives happen very quickly, in and out. They rotate around and then they calm down. 4 people get antied here. Oops, I accidentally fast forwarded. After they kill the soldier, Izayaki hits a big nade and 4 people get antied. So literally as 6-man can use all their defensive cooldowns, their matrix, their speed, their fade, their jump, their bubble, their fade, and the fly. All of these characters have cooldowns to keep themselves out of a fight a little bit. So when something like this happens where they get naded, they can play slowly for a little bit and then stage another dive. They see that Void has used his fly and he becomes a diveable target. Literally any target that is stationary is diveable to the 6-man comp. Again, I really want to emphasize that it takes a really long time to stage and coordinate versus normal team comps that have diveable targets. You just play slow, figure out what the enemies are doing, rotate around, and when you see an opportunity, you see the soldier out of position, you can cut him off with a jump, dive him, get the kill. And then you just reset, look for another diveable target, and go in again. Another example, I really like this example from actually I'm going to rewind this to the start of the attack here. This is a really classic example of what it's like to attack as 6-man. So they run out, Sparkle's playing Genji. Genji can also be played in 6-man. And you can see the Outlaws playing a classic double shield comp with a Brigitte instead of a Zen because they don't want to be as diveable. Again, we just go in. Watching that again, you just see everyone play the corner, waiting for the right time. Everyone's ready, let's go in. Fielder will just walk in with Moira. Everyone just dies. Big moment here. Huge carry play by Hanbin is getting out alive. This is so huge by Hanbin that he gets out alive because it allows Fielder to build up the coalescence so quickly. and literally like 40 seconds in the game, 90% to Coalescence. A big thing about 6-man is when you have an ultimate, especially a support ultimate, at like 80 to 90%, you don't go into the fight until you build that ultimate first. Okay, they have the ultimate, they're going in, they walk, and they just destroy. I'm gonna do that, sorry. Just in case you got distracted. Just walk in with Coalescence. Everyone's using their cooldowns. Just walk in, use your cooldowns. You're going to trade some kills. Build ultimates. Use your ultimates as you get them. Clean up fights. I love that example. And then this example is also really good. I'll pause it I'll pause it real quick right here. Once you turn, you can see that Doha on the Reaper is flanking already staged. So they can just dive really hard. An important thing to notice here is that they trade kills. Happy gets a kill on Jaxa, Dante kills Sparkle. So although they clean up most of the kills, there's a few people still alive. They're down their Lucio, they're down their Echo, and so they can just wait for respawners. Jaxa and Sparkle will come back very quickly. That's another benefit of 6-man, is that you play aggressively, you trade kills, and the people who die will get back quickly. Fielder gets his Coalescence, of course. And once you see the Lucio and the Echo come back, and once you see the Outlaws start to kind of poke this corner, Damage Orb, Coalescence, walk in. Now this example is really cool because Fielder Coalescences and Fearless jumps in and bubbles, but Dreamer, you can see the Orisa player, gets caught out. They dive the backline at first, but the Outlaws backline does a very good job of kiting the dive. They kind of get out, but Dreamer has no choice to get out, so everyone just sort of turns back and kills the Orisa. And once they've kind of peeled back, the Outlaws backline gets a little greedy and tries to poke without an Orisa here while the few last seconds of Coalescence are still up. And then the Dallas Fuel are able to do a second dive. I love this example. This is really an excellent example of what 6-man is trying to do. Now, something kind of interesting happens when you play the mirror match in 6-man versus 6-man. Because if you look at a classic 6-man composition with Monkey Diva, Lucio Moira, Reaper, Echo, or Tracer, Sombra, Doomfist, Genji, there aren't any diveable targets. So if you watch this example of the Dallas Fuel and the Vancouver Titans having a mirror match on Volskaya, if you watch how Fearless plays this defense, when there's no diveable targets to jump onto, you really have to just sort of kite. And there's a little bit of rock, paper, scissors going on here, where, like, we'll say that a normal composition like a double shield is a rock, then 6-man is paper, and then playing 6-man, like if you try to hard dive a 6-man composition, like if the Fuel decide to play super aggressive like they do into any other composition, then the Vancouver Titans can just use their cooldowns to be defensive, bait over aggression, and punish Fearless. Fearless has to be very careful to never be caught out with a jump. He needs to be using his jump to get away. If he uses his jump to get in, he's a free kill because he won't kill anybody. You see him walk up just to tase a little bit, playing around his Hanbin's defense matrix. He's not really peeking without defense matrix, and they're poking out. Now remember, there's no Tracer or Sombra in this meta, so Fearless would have to play even more passively if there was a Sombra on the field, because if he gets hacked, he's as good as dead. Like, there's no coming back from that. He's dead. No amount of defense matrix or healing nerves is going to save him. If Hanbin gets hacked, not only is Hanbin dead, but Fearless can be dead. Because if he doesn't have matrix and he's expecting to get matrix, he's going to blow up too. So he needs to be very careful about Sombra. Versus Sombra, you need to be playing very, very carefully. But since there's no Sombra, you can walk up, look some Taze. Fearless takes a little bit of damage, and he uses his jump to get out. And notice how Hanbin is playing so much farther up than Fearless, because Hanbin has defense matrix. And Fearless doesn't have defense matrix, so he needs to be very careful about what type of poke he takes. Once Fielder has Coalescence, and once they see some low targets on the Titans, they can play more aggressively. But this kind of turns back into a neutral fight, really. Be careful, jump away when you're taking a little bit of damage, reset. Neither team has really accomplished anything. They just sort of, like, wasted a minute off the clock. Both teams are kind of playing passively. This is why 6-man is sometimes called the zombie comp, because nothing dies. And that's not because everyone is invincible. It's because everyone can play around their cooldowns in a way that they don't get killed. And this is an interesting example. I'll show it from both Fielder's point of view and Fearless's point of view. But if you look at the Outlaws composition here, it's 6-man, but instead of Lucio, they're playing Brigida. Now, I think this is really bad. I don't know who came up with this team composition for the Outlaws, but this is just straight up not good. This is 6-man, but you can't disengage. So all of a sudden, everyone on the Outlaws becomes a lot more diveable. And it's hard for the Outlaws to dive anyone on the field because they can just use Lucio to get away. So if you look how Fuel kind of play this, they're staging. They don't know yet that the Outlaws are playing Brigida. And in a sustained fight, I think that Brigida does more than Lucio does, because Inspire is a better healing and has better CC. So if the Fuel never actually go in, like if they try to slow play it just like they did versus the Titans here, I think the Outlaws win this. But the Fuel, you know, they realize that it's not a true 6-man composition. They can be aggressive. And look how Doha plays this. Doha just goes, I'm TPing in. You can see him use a teleporter right here. And then Fearless jumps in. Now, something really important to point out from Fielder here, this is a really cool micro play by Fielder, is that Fielder kind of looks both ways before crossing the street here. He kind of checks the danger before he walks in. Once Fearless jumps in and once Doha is in, everyone peels back for the Winston. And if they peel back for the Winston, then all of a sudden it's safe for Fielder to walk in. If Monkey jumps in and Reaper teleports in and no one peels back for them, Fielder can't go in, but that's no problem. Because if you're not peeling back for your backline is going to die. So Fielder doesn't need to walk in unless they peel back. Since the enemy team is peeling back, he can walk in feeling pretty safe. But had the enemy team just sort of kept poking him out, he could just play this corner, no big deal. But anyways, they walk in. They don't immediately get any kills, but they get position. See how much damage Fearless takes. Like, it's crazy. Fearless really needs to be making sure that he uses his jumps to keep himself safe. Or he can't take any jumps where he's going to die. Or that doesn't... He needs to be taking a jump that either keeps him alive or trades kills. And versus a team comp that's hard to dive, then you really need to be making sure that you're using your jump wisely. They get kills. He's using his jump in a way that he knows he won't get killed. Fielder just walks in. Saving Coalescence, very smart. Excellent example. And we'll watch it again from Fearless's point of view. I'll point out a couple interesting things Fearless does. He takes a little bit of damage to help Fielder build Coalescence. Staging, scouting, realizing that they have a brig. Doha teleports in. And look how shallow he jumps. I'm going to play that jump again. This is very important. Fearless, with this jump, could land directly on Juby, but decides to land right here, a big distance away from Juby here. Fearless will never fully commit unless he knows he won't die. In the very first fight, he's very likely not going to fully commit. And look what happens. Everyone peels back. He wasn't going to be able to get a kill anyways. He's very happy with this play. And Fearless still takes a ton of damage, even though he didn't fully commit. It's pretty crazy. And be very careful. Fearless really knows just how far he can push these jumps. And right as his cooldown is coming back, he starts taking a ton of damage. And then he uses that jump again just to be defensive. And then again, just slow plays it, waits for his cooldowns to be back, waits for himself to get healed up. They're up a pick. He's also going to do a bit of a shallow jump, not fully committing, and then focusing down targets once the team fight breaks out. Now let's look at an example of one of our games. For a second there, I thought I was muted the whole time, and I was going to be super disappointed. Looking at both teams' team compositions real quick, we can see that one team is playing Reaper Sombra, and one is playing Tracer Sombra. I think Tracer Sombra is better, in theory. If both teams are playing it decently well, Tracer Sombra edges out the Reaper Sombra. Reaper is kind of limited in his aggression, in his scope of influence, and he provides a lot more frontal pressure, which you can see we really struggle with. Both teams kind of do this weird rotation thing. It's not 100% necessary, but it's not the worst thing in the world. We got 30 seconds to play with. Now, what really needs to happen in order for the Tracer Sombra team to win is we need to have flanking going on. The thing is about Sombra that makes her really strong in 6-man is that she has two different playstyles she can play. She can play a flanker playstyle where she hacks a target like a DPS or a support, and all of a sudden that target becomes super diveable. Like if she hacks the enemy Reaper, then we can dive the Reaper and kill the Reaper. That's a huge play. If she hacks the Sombra, we can dive and kill the Sombra. That's a huge play. If she hacks either of the supports, then they become diveable targets. Whereas now, because they have all their defensive cooldowns, none of them are diveable. And if we commit onto any of them, we're going to lose. We can also play Sombra in this tank busting, tank kind of punishing playstyle. You can see how all of them are stacked up together. And look at what happens to our monkey. Our monkey is a little bit farther up than Fearless kind of plays, and is instantly taking damage, really requiring a lot of defense matrix here. It's not the end of the world. He can jump out, but he needs to be careful because Sombra is looking for a hack onto our diva. And the thing is about hack is that sure, our diva can shoot at the Sombra to avoid being hacked, but the time it takes for our diva to turn onto the Sombra is enough time for their Reaper to delete our monkey. And at this point, we're in big trouble. And then they also get a hack onto our diva, almost killing a diva, but our diva is kind of as good as dead at this point. This team fight is completely lost. How can we avoid what just happened? Well, what needs to happen is our tanks need to understand the difference between team compositions. These team compositions are only one hero different, but because of that one hero difference, this team composition needs to be played completely differently. I think that because we have a flanker, our Sombra should be playing a flanker playstyle. If we're playing a Doomfist or a Reaper in place of this Tracer, I think Sombra needs to match the playstyle of the other DPS. Like we can go super flanker because we have two flankers. And if you look at how our flankers play, you know, Cam on the Tracer, really doing an excellent job of drawing attention but also staying alive. We're engaging when our Tracer is out of the fight. This can't happen. This can't be the case. our tracer needs to be pressuring them. A majority of our pressure needs to be coming from our DPS. And walking in a 5v6 is just really, really not good. And this is more of a 4v6, or I would say a 4v5. And because our D.Va and their Sombra are kind of canceling each other out, and because of that, we're requiring too many resources that we have, really, for our monkey. We don't have enough resources to keep him up. There's no way in the world. So versus a team comp with a Reaper, especially with a Reaper and a Sombra, we should play no closer in than about right here, because we never want to have one of our tanks hacked and sped onto. We want to play around here. We want to wait for our DPS to pull attention. Once our DPS are flanking and pulling attention away, then we can start being a little bit more aggressive, because then it becomes an even fight. Especially if our Sombra gets a hack onto any target, because a hack onto any target, we can stage a hard dive. We can be super aggressive. So our playstyle needs to be either all the way in or all the way out. Kind of to sum up everything that's been said so far, and when you're playing 6-man versus team comps that are not 6-man, you go for long staging fights, lots of rotations, looking for targets. You find a diveable target out of position, you dive and you kill them. Or you have fights like the Dallas Fuel have had here, where you hard engage, you trade kills, or you just get killed, basically. And then you just farm ultimates. And then the next fight you go in with coalescence, or with ultimates, and clean up kills. Those are the types of fights you should have versus non-6-man team comps. And then versus 6-man team comps, where neither of us have Sombra, team fights take forever, because both teams are slow playing it, poking each other out, not feeding. And then whoever has ultimates can start to be more aggressive. You can be more aggressive than usual when you have ultimates, like Sparkle's using copy here onto the enemy D.Va. And once we're using ultimates and committing ultimates, and we'll have primal soon, we're having beat soon, we can be more aggressive, but it's really just about being as aggressive as you can without feeding. And yeah, that's what it really comes down to. If there's any questions, just reach out. We can do individual stuff.